Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode at the CSM Practice podcast and YouTube channel. The purpose of this podcast is really to share best practices and how you can elevate your strategy around making sure your customers are successful. And one of the aspects of creating a successful strategy for customer success is the ability to connect our customer experience, our employee experience using data-driven strategies and methodologies, and do it in a more scalable manner. And so today I'm really excited to have Mary Poppen, who's a dear friend of mine. She sits on my advisory board, and she's one of the most exciting thought leaders to follow regarding customer success strategies. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Reed. It's so great to see you always.
And today we're going to actually dive in on your recently launched book, Goodbye CHURN, Hello Growth. Congratulations on publishing it.
Thank you so much. Can't believe it's actually done.
Yeah, it really does take a lot of thought and hours to write a book, I suppose.
It does, yes. You have to carve out some time to, I think, just get sort of the framework set and the message that you really want to send.
And what was the message you wanted to send for this book, Mary?
I really wanted to send the message that customer centricity is possible, that customers should be treated as unique, I call them snowflakes, and that personalizing their experience at scale is possible. So that's kind of the gist of the overall message.
So before we dive in, and you actually have in chapter 6 a very clear framework that anybody can follow to get closer to that vision. I wanted to start with some background. You know, what fascinated me about this book is that you actually start with a very personal story about how you become so passionate about data-driven customer centricity. Maybe you can share, where did this all start? You actually didn't work at involve.ai, and you started way before, maybe when you were at SAP.
Yeah, actually, even before that, I started my career in consulting. I was going to kind of change the world for employees and customers through process improvement. And that's definitely possible, but it also takes a long time. And as a consultant, as you probably know, you can give advice. It doesn't actually mean people will do it or do it the way you would do it. And so I ended up going into a software company and building organizational development, leadership effectiveness programs, and talent management programs. And that's how I got introduced to a company that was brand new in software as a service, which was not well known at the time at all. And it was the first human capital management software that was SaaS oriented. And I was so intrigued and implemented it at the organization I was at that I thought it was the most interesting, best thing since sliced bread. And so I made the jump to join that organization. And what it allowed me to do is realize that the old traditional way of implementing software was like building houses. But so you could sell and sort of walk away a bit because, building a house is really hard. It's hard for people to move from their house. But SaaS was like renting apartments. And so it was a lot easier for customers to find a new landlord or move to a different apartment. And so you had to shift the mindset and the model to be more around the customer than around your company or the product, because they could easily leave and go to another provider if you weren't giving them value every day. And so you needed a role or roles focused on ensuring that customer, that tenant, was going to continue to rent from you over and over again. And that was really kind of the impetus for what now is customer success. And so I was in on that from the very beginning and saw opportunities to really change how we put the customer at the center.
What are some of the challenges that you noticed with the emergence of SaaS that started popping up that weren't really existing when it was just the on-prem world?
Yeah, the biggest is really the renewal. It used to be in the on-prem world with maintenance was almost a given because customers needed some support. There were some jokes about it being, the golden handcuffs for software companies who needed to provide maintenance services and fees. And customers were very much at the whim of software companies to sunset versions of products and things like that. And with SaaS, though, when a customer came up for renewal, it wasn't like a maintenance agreement. It was basically re-upping for your entire solution, your value proposition all over again. And you typically have a competitor at your heels waiting to take that customer over with lower cost or a new feature. And so the difference really was if you wait until renewal, your chances of keeping that customer are not as great as if you would have been tracking their success and value and adoption of your product, from day one.
And then in your book, you kind of like share that experience of handling that situation in a mock-up situation, the scenario that's probably something very close to what you had to deal with back in the days where collecting data to explain what is happening was an absolute nightmare. And then Duo are trying to present to the management team what they're going to do. Maybe you can unfold it to us. What is the solution that they end up actually adopting or proposing?
Yeah, it is really close to my own heart because throughout my career, being in a room to do a QBR with the entire executive team or in front of the board and being asked really to present what's driving the success of customers, or where are we failing? Why did we have surprise churn? And without the data and information at your fingertips, it makes it really hard to pinpoint what is actually driving those things. And so you go in with assumptions, anecdotal stories, the best that you can to tell what's happening, right? You're trying to rationalize what's happening. But without the data and the insight to be able to point to exactly what signals are driving churn for your customers, or what's even making them successful and happy, it's sort of like shooting darts at a dartboard and hoping you hit the center. And the worst is if you're presenting information to the board and the following quarter you come back and say, well, actually, we were wrong. We do have more churn because we didn't focus on these other important things. It's not that well received. You feel like you don't understand your business. When in reality, you just don't have the insight that you need to be able to prioritize and direct your resources in a scaled way or in the best way to keep your customers and grow them.
I really felt like this was your own story, even though it was like obviously a make-believe scenario. It sounds like that was something yourself were struggling with, and you worked at different companies. And what was the thing that you were trying to solve for when you were working for Glint, which is a LinkedIn company, which is now a Microsoft company, as a VP customer success? What were you trying to solve for that you almost found like it was so hard to do in order to get that data and to be more customer-centric, that's data-driven, to solve that issue?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges was segmentation. So started at Glint when we had less than 100 customers, less than 10 million in revenue. It was very easy to be high touch. And you and I have talked about this a lot. The kind of white glove model is a lot easier when you're getting started, and you almost need to have it to figure out where your product provides the most value and how your customers use it. But over time, as you grow and you have 1,000 customers and 100 million in revenue, you can't sustain that model and be successful as a business. It probably sounds familiar to a lot of people listening. And so segmentation and making sure that you're providing the right service, the right tools, the right opportunity for customers at the right time. You need data and information to be able to determine how you can separate that experience and still have your customers be amazingly successful. And that's one of the things that was missing for me. So we built a digital delivery model. We segmented our customers based on enterprise, mid-market, smaller business. We tried to kind of put customers almost in a box of, if you're this size contract, you get this service. But the reality is some customers were super successful with a self-touch model and some weren't. And likewise, on the enterprise side, some didn't need the high touch level we were giving them. They were super successful, had the resources and knowledge to do a lot of the work themselves. And so it really sort of came down to, I wish I had data that would tell me, how do I segment the type of service that my customers are going to need to be successful outside of sales segmentation? And that was really one of the impetuses for starting Involve, as I talked to the co-founders and really dug into the things that I was missing as a CS leader. What would give me power to grow the team, grow the company, help our customers be successful? And it really came down to being able to look across the customer experience, get all of the data and insight that was available, quantitative, qualitative, put the whole picture together and be able to, it's almost like having 1,000 data scientists, at your fingertips. Use AI to run those analyses and see what are the trends that help your customers be successful, and what are the trends of churned customers. So we could pick out those signals and start to predict and get ahead of any of the risk and not leave money on the table. There's expansion opportunities you can leverage outside of the renewal window.
Really interesting. I actually interviewed Mike Sasaki at the Pulse conference, and he was looking to do something very similar as well. He was talking about how customer segmentation that drives essentially the engagement model should really be driven based on different scores that you give the customer, or a data-driven decision. So a customer might switch to high touch versus very low touch, not necessarily based on their ARR or industry or use case or amount of money, whatever. It's really about, do they need a high touch at this moment? And this helped him tremendously in terms of scaling the team. Do you feel like that was your experience at Glint as well, once you started leveraging AI to make those data-driven segmentation decisions?
I do, yeah, because we were able to pick out signals around readiness and capability during onboarding that hadn't really been tagged or looked for before that. The handoffs, even from sales to CS, and the type of information that we could get from sales, we made that more formalized so that we knew coming in which customers were going to be able to do more self-serve capability versus those that were going to need a little bit more high touch from our technical team to onboard successfully. And so a lot of that came out of the data analysis that we did and helped us really hone in not only on where to put resources, but the types of tools and content that was needed as well.
And just so our listeners really understand the context of all of this, when you were working at Glint, you didn't have dozens of customers. You had hundreds and thousands of customers, right? And this is really the model where applying AI and doing a little bit more sophisticated segmentation really plays a key role.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that, and what we've seen working with customers now is when you have less than 100 customers, you can generally get your arms around what's happening with them. It's when you start to expand beyond 100 customers that you do start to see some differentiation in the ability to segment them, types of industries, types of just sizes of customers in general, and then dig into their behaviors and the things within their own organizations that indicate readiness with your product. Customers who are moving from one solution to another, like use support system, need a little bit more handholding, and there's some complexity there versus one that has a stable tech stack, if you will. And so those are some of the things that were, when you start to get over 100 customers, it's harder to keep an eye on all of that without growing your team to the point that you maintain that high touch.
Yeah. And in your book, like in page 45, you kind of clarify why this is so important from a customer experience standpoint, but then you go into detail as to why this actually not only impacts the way the customer experiences you, but it actually also impacts the employee experience. Maybe you could share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'm super passionate about this. The opportunity to focus on customer experience and make that better and empower and arm your customers means that your internal teams also need that data and that insight in order to be able to more strategically help customers, but also personalize the experience.
Mhm.
And so if you can give your employees that data and the insight that they can personalize the experience for customers and be proactive, now you're arming your team to be heroes, that those employees, they're going to be more successful in their role. They're going to be able to take on more. So it's going to be a greater scaled opportunity, but they're going to deliver a better experience to customers. And then your customers as well, focusing on their overall experience and arming them with the tools from as much to as little hand-holding as they need, they're going to be happy. So it's a win-win on both the employee experience side and the customer experience side, when you can really lay out that customer journey in a detailed way by resources needed, type of customer needs at each stage, by segment, and then arm your employees to be able to deliver that.
Right. And in chapter 4, you kind of hone down on the idea of, you need to collect cross-functional data. And I think all of that is to get to your point that you make in chapter 5, as to, this is not just about employee experience for your customer success team, but you go in and you elaborate, hey, listen, this is actually going to have a cross-functional impact. And here you go through like your technical services team, your customer training and education team, your technical support team. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened in Glint after you started taking in that approach and how it proliferated from your own team to cross-functional teams that your customer success members were actually involved in on an almost day-to-day basis?
Yeah, what I think is so amazing about customer intelligence and data and insight is that teams have very specific roles, KPIs, right, metrics that they're driving toward. And even so functions like sales, marketing, and customer success. But within those teams, there's sub-teams. And the insights and the data that you can arm the team with is going to make that clarity of how to deliver their KPIs and their customer deliverables that much more clear. And everyone will be working in a more collaborative way because I'll see what you're working on and how you're doing it. You'll see what I'm doing. And the customer will feel like the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, instead of a lot of times our customers feel like, are you guys even talking internally? But with providing the data and insight in a single sort of visibility for all of the teams that are touching the customer, it allows that experience to be, for both the employees and the customer, that much more enjoyable because everybody's on the same page. You're able to deliver a more optimal experience. Now extrapolate all of that data and insight on how you can arm product to deliver better for customers, because your team knows where customers get stuck or where they're using use cases best or what else they need next, and they can give that back to product. Same with sales. What messaging is working? How are they positioning the value of your solution? And you can arm sales with that information, and then also marketing. So cross-functionally, the customer success organization is really the holder of all of the insight and intelligence on customers that can be shared back with other functions.
Absolutely.
And then the entire organization is prioritizing and focused on the customer.
And that's how you drive customer centricity, not just for your team, but get customer centricity culture that's data-driven for your entire company.
Yeah, I like to say, help me help you.
Yeah.
when you're talking to the sales leader and your counterpart, if you're the CCO and you're talking to the CRO, it's, guess what? Here's information on what our customers need. And so if we can work together on this expansion white space, we can get this product or this feature in more hands of our customers. They're going to be successful and it's going to grow our revenue. That's the type of insight that can be shared back, and ultimately then a collaborative approach to progressing the revenue for your company, but also the customer experience.
Yeah. So the first five chapters of the book really takes the reader through a story of, what are the challenges that most companies actually have to deal with on an ongoing basis, and like the possible solution and the impact of that on customer experience and employee experience. But then we get to chapter 6, which is really the 5 Ps to customer intelligence and how to bring it to life in your organization. And I think this chapter is really sort of like your recipe that you're gifting to the customer success community on, if you wanted to take that on, what is the step-by-step approach to actually implement it within your own organization? And I was wondering, can you like walk us through that? Essentially, I just wanted to make sure that everybody sees there's like a real chart here, like all the P's are explained. Maybe we start with the playbooks. That's the first P.
As I thought about rolling out customer intelligence when I was at Glint and LinkedIn, it was really, how do we even get started and put a framework around this? And what like type of data am I going to need? And what kind of resources will I need to actually take action on the insights? And so it really prompted me to think about the overall impact that customer intelligence could have on my team. And playbooks is a common term in our industry and something everybody thinks about for delivering a better customer experience, but also scaling your organization. And I think the challenge with playbooks historically is that you, as a leader or team, have to define what plays are going to be the most effective. Oftentimes, it's hard to build playbooks that take segments of customers into consideration or unique variances in customers. And so a lot of times we need to apply playbooks in a generic kind of way to customers. But that's all we've had the opportunity to do, which is great and far better than we were 10 years ago where we didn't have this kind of mindset. But with customer intelligence, you can now create individual playbooks for every customer is really kind of the way to think about it.
Every customer. So not even a cohort of customers. A specific customer might get one playbook and a different customer might have its own unique playbook. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. And of course, there's overlap in the types of actions and resources and things that make up those playbooks. But just in thinking about every customer as a snowflake, but being very unique, even in the same industry and the same size of customer, or even two customers who are competitors, there are things within their organization that make them unique, that differentiates them. And that's where we really need to know and understand our customers to be able to create a specific playbook for them. But the playbook is only going to be as good as the data and the information that you have in order to run it. And that's where the other P's come in. The ability to take insight and data and become predictive.
This is the second P is the predictive. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so you can look back at this customer's behavior over time. How have they used the product? What is their sentiment been? And this is where AI becomes very helpful, is for this customer, in looking at their historical behavior, we can start to see when product usage drops, when the exec sponsor sentiment isn't great, when severity of support tickets actually has an impact on their success. We can see these things over time by customer, and it allows you to then predict if you don't take action on some of these things that are going on with the customer, here's what's going to happen. They're going to churn. Or, hey, this customer's in a really great place. We're predicting based on these signals, this customer's ready for expansion. So the predictive piece is really being able to look at a historical view of the customer and extrapolate that into predicting their future, right, actions and intent. That allows you to get prescriptive. Here's how I know this customer. Here's how I'm going to reach out to help them based on what's going on. And I'm going to guide them based on what I know about our product or service and what they need and how to maximize their experience. So that's the prescriptive piece, not prescriptive like, here's how the product works, here's how you have to use it, but here's what your process is, and here's how the product's going to work best for you. That prescriptive nature. And then the ability to be proactive about it. So reach out to the customer before they even know, in some cases, that they need your help. and point out, here's what we see going on in your organization. Here's what we see with your users. We want to get ahead of it by helping you adopt this feature, something like that, and then be proactive about it. But the best is that this entire experience then leads to personalization. And not only personalization for the customer as a whole, but your contact, your main points of contact, your exec sponsor and champion, you're able to have a relationship and bring value to them in a way that helps them in their role and as individuals and makes them look like heroes, but also helps their organization. So it's like this win-win-win opportunity.
That's awesome. So you got the 5 Ps, essentially, that it sounds like the 5 ingredients. If you put all of them together, you get awesome results. And if you miss one of these ingredients, you're probably not going to get as much an impact or effect as you would otherwise.
Yeah, they definitely go really, really well together for optimal outcomes for the customer, and for your organization and your employees.
Yeah.
But if you miss an ingredient, I think you can go back and learn from it. You're not being proactive, then obviously you're missing out on leveraging all of that data and insight for your customer. If you're not leveraging the predictions that it's possible in 6 months that customer will churn. The key is you should never have a churn that's a surprise anymore. And that is one of the key outcomes of customer intelligence, leveraging the 5 Ps, is every company will have some churn. I mean, it's sort of inevitable because things happen with your customers, they get acquired, et cetera. But you should never be surprised by it. And the things that are fixable, you should be able to address early.
There you go. That's the framework. I think all the Ps, by the way, are so important for any strategy you're going to implement with customer success. If you're going to set up a customer success practice, those 5 Ps that Mary just went through are absolutely critical. And I think it's important to remember that if you opt into overlaying a tool like customer intelligence, which is different than a customer success software, we actually have on our CSM practice website, there's a resource library and you can download the customer success tech stack. And you will see we have different categories. We have a category for customer intelligence tools, and we have a separate category for customer success. And so if you were to overlay and kind of create your hamburger tech stack, essentially the customer intelligence would sit above your customer success solution that would feed from examples, something like usage data that feeds into customer success that then integrates into customer intelligence. And so if you did that, that would essentially help you tremendously when you have a large number of customers and you need to scale everything and make it super, super personalized from the customer experience, because the customer success software typically lacks that final touch, if you will. And I think you, Mary, were actually using a customer success solution and you were struggling with it because it couldn't get you to that last mile.
Yeah, we're at an age now where AI is no longer the creepy, like just robot stuff in the future. We're at a place where artificial intelligence, machine learning can take all of your data across your entire tech stack and tell a story. You don't need data scientists working every day with you having to think about what questions you want answered. The AI is doing that for you. It's looking at the patterns. It's doing it dynamically. And your customers change. Their product adoption changes. Their sentiment changes. Their satisfaction shifts over time. In some cases, product usage and sentiment changes daily. Without an opportunity to leverage technology to see those changes, it's really hard to stay on top of that. And then we get back to the renting apartment component. If you're not on top of those signals, it's easy for them to say, I'm going to go to your apartment competitor across the street.
Totally. Well, thank you so much for sharing and going through this book review with me. I think it was just fascinating to hear your thoughts about the topic and how you stumbled into this customer intelligence category and world, really, and methodologies. If you guys want to learn more, get this book. We'll add the link where you can get a free copy of it in the description below. Mary, tremendous work. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your framework with us.
Thank you. Thank you for doing the review with me, and thank you for reading the book.
All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like. If you want the book, go to the link in the description. I'll see you at the next video.